We just spent a great deal of time talking about the economics of cannabis, the cost-benefit analysis of legalizing cannabis, and that's great. These are discussions that we need to have. These are the types of discussions we usually have surrounding cannabis. But the real conversation that we need to be having is not just about the economic benefits of legalization, but rather acknowledging the massive and horrific costs of the failed status quo known as marijuana prohibition. Ultimately, these tragic and very human costs are why I've dedicated the last decade of my career and personal life to dismantling the failed policy of cannabis prohibition. When I first started this journey, it started in the same place as many of you, staring the very real medical benefits of cannabis directly in the face. I watched as a man who was in severe pain with terrible tremors, who immediately found relief from his debilitating symptoms simply by smoking a joint. He looked me in the eye and he said, "Ryan, if I didn't have access to cannabis, I would kill myself." And I knew at that moment that I had to step out and do something. But my understanding quickly evolved from there. If I had been lied to my entire life about the benefits of marijuana, then I had to begin questioning the wisdom of the policy of prohibition as well. I soon realized another truth, that despite what I was told in my elementary DARE classes, marijuana doesn't kill, but marijuana prohibition does. And this may seem like a radical position at first until you start looking at the very real human cost of prohibition. We don't have to look very far. We can see current examples of this with the vape illness being caused by black market illicit vaping devices. This situation is no different than people going blind from illicit booze during alcohol prohibition. Legal regulated alcohol markets eliminated that harm, just as legal regulated cannabis markets will eliminate the vaping illness. But there are even more egregious examples. With the case of 29-year-old Jason Westcott of Tampa, killed by police in his house for a total of 0.2 grams of marijuana. Or Trevin Cole of Las Vegas, targeted for 1.8 ounces, shot by an officer as he was flushing the marijuana down the toilet. Or Livonia Riggins, also of Tampa, who was in bed when officers shot and killed him and discovered less than an ounce of marijuana. Or on the other side, the Texas SWAT officer who was killed in a pre-dawn raid over 4 ounces of marijuana when police failed to adequately announce themselves and the homeowner assumed he was being robbed and shot the officer protecting his pregnant wife. These tragic stories play out over and over again, day after day, in all of our communities across this country because of the failed policy of marijuana prohibition. And what about the cost of having a criminal record? In Arizona, any amount of cannabis is a felony. Any amount, a seed, a piece of resin in your pipe is still a felony. And we are the last state in the union to persist with that sort of lunacy. A felony conviction for a small amount of marijuana could drastically alter the course of someone's life. It can severely inhibit employment options, housing options, parental rights, access to education and student loans, even the ability to join law enforcement or the military. These enormous costs represent the unfulfilled potential of our fellow citizens, and they are borne by all of us one way or another. But the costs of prohibition, in fact, are borne disproportionately by communities of color. That's right. Not only does prohibition kill, but it's racist too. African Americans are 3 times more likely to be arrested for marijuana possession compared to whites, despite similar rates of cannabis use. Any public policy with such a horrific track record must be re-examined. It's time for a different approach in Arizona, and it is time to relegate marijuana prohibition to the dustbin of history where it belongs. Legal, taxed, regulated cannabis markets work. They result in hundreds of millions of new tax revenue, tens of thousands of jobs, and huge reductions in arrest rates, freeing up police to deal with real, genuine safety issues. Oh, and by the way, in case you were wondering, not a single state that has passed cannabis legalization has seen an increase in teen use. Not a single one. So I ask you all, after everything you've learned today, please join me in a new approach, a smarter, safer approach, legal regulated cannabis for Arizona. Please vote yes next November. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Carlos Alfaro from Arizona Talks, and if you like conversations like these, be sure to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, and at our website at arizonatalks.org.